وكل حزب الله إلى سوريا سنذهب إلى سوريا.
هذا النظام لن يبقى في الشارع صالحا.
Good afternoon and thank you for joining us on FutureTV. I'm Linda Tamim and these are today's top stories. Lebanon's parliament fails to convene for the fourth time due to a lack of quorum. Egyptian security forces arrest the Muslim Brotherhood top spiritual leader Mohammed Badia in Cairo. And UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon expresses concern over the current situation in Egypt. Lebanon's parliament fails once again to convene due to the lack of quorum. Reports say the session has been postponed for the fourth time as Speaker Nabih Berri did not even attend the meeting. The pan-Arab daily Al Hayat says that the speaker was likely to postpone the two-day session in order to avoid further tensions in Lebanon in light of the ongoing political disputes and security unrest. The parliament has failed to convene on 3 previous occasions because of most blocs' objections to discuss a number of items on the legislators' agenda. The session has been postponed until Monday, September the 23rd. The Marwan Hadid brigades have claimed responsibility for the firing of rockets in the Bekaa region on Sunday. The previously unknown group claimed responsibility for the attack in a statement and video aired on YouTube. On Monday, President Michel Sleiman expressed grave concern with the shelling that took place in Hermel and asked the Army Command to launch an investigation into the attack in order to tackle the situation with the appropriate means. Prime Minister Najib Mikati stresses that the Lebanese government is exerting efforts to uncover the fate of the 2 Turkish pilots who were kidnapped 2 weeks ago on the airport road. Following talks with Turkish ambassador to Lebanon, Mikati reiterates that the Turkish authorities should press negotiations concerning the 9 Lebanese pilgrims held in Syria's Azaz. Turkish Deputy Prime Minister Bülent Arınç said after a cabinet meeting on Monday that the 2 pilots are alive and that their whereabouts are known. A previously known group calling itself Zuwar Imam al-Rida claimed the abduction and demanded that Turkey use its influence with Syrian rebels it backs to secure the release of 9 Lebanese Shiites kidnapped in Syria in May of 2012. Lebanese authorities have arrested 3 suspects and charged them with connection with the abduction. 3 preachers associated with Salafist Sheikh Ahmed al-Asir have been summoned for questioning after delivering speeches criticizing Lebanese security agencies. The 3 sheikhs, Othman Hnaini, Ala Saleh and Asim al-Arifi, have been heard heatedly criticizing the Lebanese army and the judiciary in speeches given in mosques and pro-Asir rallies. Back in June, Asir's forces had ambushed a military checkpoint in Sidon, inciting clashes with the army and leaving at least 18 soldiers and 28 gunmen dead. Anti-Hezbollah Ahmed al-Asir and dozens of his followers have been charged with murder, attempted murder, destruction of property, and inciting sectarian strife. U.S. Ambassador to Lebanon Mark Connelly leaves Lebanon, concluding a 3-year term serving as Washington's top diplomat in Beirut. U.S. Ambassador designate to Lebanon David Hale is expected to assume his diplomatic responsibilities in the next few weeks. After he leaves his post as U.S. Special Envoy for Middle East Peace, Hale has served as envoy to Jordan from 2005 to 2008 and was director of the Office of Israel and Palestinian Affairs from 2001 to 2003. From 2008 to 2009, he was a Deputy Assistant Secretary of State in the Bureau of Near Eastern Affairs. The Muslim Brotherhood top spiritual leader is arrested in Egyptian security forces in Cairo. Authorities say Mohammed Badia, age 70, was detained early this morning near the sit-in supporting ousted President Mohamed Morsi at an apartment in Nasser City. The arrest takes place a day after the bloodshed in Sinai, which killed 25 policemen at the hands of suspected Islamic militants. Residents of Cairo welcomed his arrest, calling it a great achievement. Badia and his deputy, Khairat al-Shatir, are due to stand on trial this month for allegedly being involved in the killing of protesters last June. The Muslim Brotherhood has named an interim leader to head the group following Badia's arrest. The Freedom and Justice Party website says Mahmoud Azzat, deputy leader of the Muslim Brotherhood, will assume the role of supreme guide of a group on the temporary basis. The bodies of 25 Egyptian policemen killed by suspected Islamist militants in yesterday's attack in Sinai have been flown back to a Cairo airbase. The ceremony for the dead was led by a cleric before the coffins draped in Egyptian flags. The number of attacks on Egyptian security forces in Sinai has been climbing since the removal of President Mohamed Morsi. According to medical and security sources, 3 other policemen were wounded in the violent attack near the northern Sinai town of Rafah on the border with Palestine. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon expresses concern over the current situation in Egypt. Speaking at the UN headquarters in New York following the recent trip to the Middle East, Ban condemned the violence in the country.
I'm alarmed by ongoing developments and the widespread outbreak of violent protest and excessive use of force. I strongly condemn attacks on churches, hospitals, and other public facilities. There is no justification for targeting civilians or destroying infrastructures and property so important for Egypt's future. Preventing further loss of life should be the highest priority. I urge all Egyptians to exercise maximum restraint and resolve differences peacefully.
The U.S. State Department says no decision has been made on freezing aid to Egypt, adding the U.S. is troubled by suspicious deaths of Egyptians prisoners.
To be clear, we have not made a policy decision to put a blanket hold on economic support on the Economic Support Fund, ESF assistance. Clearly, that review is ongoing, as we've talked about in here quite a bit. That review includes military assistance, security assistance. It also includes economic assistance. But we have not made a decision to put a blanket hold. There's no decision that's been made, so any reports saying a decision have been made are inaccurate. That review is ongoing. As we said last week, and it's important to note, obviously events on the ground last week, but moving forward, will be taken into account as we consider our relationship. That we, of course, strongly condemn today's attack against Egyptian Central Security Force officers in the Sinai. We extend our condolences to the families of those who have been killed. The Sinai Peninsula remains an area of concern, and the current situation in Egypt has not improved the situation. A number of loosely knit militant groups have formed in the Sinai. The United States, of course, continues to support Egypt's ongoing efforts against terrorism and growing lawlessness in the Sinai, and we continue to cooperate with Egypt in these efforts. We deplore in the strongest terms the reprehensible attacks against over 40 Coptic Christian churches and other Christian institutions, including schools, social service societies, and businesses, by extremists bent on sowing interreligious strife when the vast majority of Egyptians reject such behavior. We're also deeply troubled by the suspicious deaths of Muslim Brotherhood prisoners in a purported prison escape attempt near Cairo. We again urge all those in Egypt to refrain from violence. There's absolutely no place for such violence in Egypt. We call on all Egypt's leaders and the international community to condemn such attacks without equivocation.
Moving on to Syria, fresh battles break out in strategic majority Kurdish areas in the country. Activists on the ground say jihadists and the main Kurdish party are fighting each other for control. In the northeastern province of Hasakeh, clashes broke out at dawn, pitting the committees for the protection of the Kurdish people against the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, Al-Nusra Front, and other battalions. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says the fighting hit Dardara, Hmeid, and Jaffa villages and others surrounding the strategic town of Ras al-Ain near the Turkish border. The fighting comes days after jihadists linked to al-Qaeda pressed a fresh offensive to take control of majority Kurdish areas. The UN says violence has been so fierce in recent days that some 30,000 Syrians, mostly Kurds, have fled to neighboring Iraq. Syrian Prime Minister says Damascus is cooperating with international chemical weapons inspectors. Speaking at the UN headquarters in New York, Secretary General Ban Ki-moon addressed the issue of possible use of chemical weapons in the country.
Current mandate of this expert team to investigate this chemical weapons use does not have the authority to determine who has used against whom. They will have to determine through their investigation whether these chemical weapons were used, then on the basis of their final scientific and expert level investigation report, then it is up to, again, the international community to determine what course of action should be taken to prove this, first of all, accountability and what needs to be done. Under any circumstances, whatever the reasons may be, use of chemical weapons is a violation of international law and international human rights law. Thus, must be those whoever might have used should be accountable. That's a firm principle.
Coming up next, the Pakistani court officially indicts former military dictator Pervez Musharraf with the murder of the late Premier Benazir Bhutto. Stay with us. Welcome back. French Interior Minister Manuel Valls says there is no hard evidence of concrete threats by Al-Qaeda to France's high-speed trains. This statement is subsequent to reports that Al-Qaeda is planning to target Europe's rail network. According to media sources, the information about the possible attacks came from the United States National Security Agency, which apparently intercepted a call between senior Al-Qaeda members a few weeks ago. Security on the German rail system has been stepped up this week, and police officers in plain clothes have been deployed, although the German Interior Ministry announced that the country receives regular threats and was not planning on increasing overall security. A spokeswoman for the German rail operator, Deutsche Bahn, said the company was always in contact with the security authorities over likely threats. The Pakistani court officially indicts former military dictator Pervez Musharraf with the murder of the late Premier Benazir Bhutto. A brief 20-minute hearing took place in the city of Rawalpindi, during which Musharraf was charged with murder, conspiracy to murder, and facilitation of murder. Once Pakistan's most powerful man, Musharraf seized power in a 1999 coup. Afsan Idil, Musharraf's lawyer, dismissed all accusations and said the president is not involved in the case at all. Bhutto was murdered in 2007 in a gun and suicide bomb attack during an election rally, just weeks after returning to Pakistan from years in exile. At the time, the government blamed Pakistani Taliban militants, and Musharraf said he had warned Bhutto of the looming danger. And now for news around the world in brief. The Nigerian military says that the leader of militant Islamist sect Boko Haram, Abubakar Shekau, may have died of injuries some weeks after a clash with soldiers. Past reports of Shekau's deaths have proved false, and there was no independent confirmation of the army account. Boko Haram wants to impose Islamic law in Nigeria's north and has become the biggest threats to stability in Nigeria. Prince William and his wife Kate released two informal family snapshots at the first official photos of their son, Prince George. The shots disappointed royal fans who were hoping to get a good look at Britain's newest royal heir. George, the third in line to the British throne, was born on July 22nd amid a global media frenzy, reflecting the international popularity of his parents and ongoing fascination for the British royal family. Some 233 migrants were rescued at sea by the Italian Navy in the early hours of this morning, bringing the total of migrants rescued over the last 2 days to well over 600. The Navy vessel Foscari rescued the migrants, which included women and children, from an overcrowded vessel about 50 miles off the coast of Lampedusa. The exhausted people were escorted onto the main Navy vessel. Tickets for the 2014 World Cup in Brazil are officially on sale today, with fans able to apply on FIFA's website. FIFA is expecting a similar demand to Germany 2006, when there were about 7 applicants for every ticket of the 64-match tournament. Around 3.3 million tickets will be available for the tournament. Tickets will range in prices from $90 for first-round matches to $990 for the final Maracana Stadium in Rio de Janeiro. Brazilian citizens over 60, local students, and members of some social programs can purchase tickets for only $23. All applications made before the 10th of October of this year will enter a random selection draw if there are not enough tickets available to fulfill all requests. And on that note, we end our bulletin for today. Now here's a recap of our headlines. Lebanon's parliament fails to convene for the fourth time due to lack of quorum. Egyptian security forces arrest the Muslim Brotherhood top spiritual leader Mohammed Badia in Cairo. And finally, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon expresses concern over the current situation in Egypt. Those are today's headlines from Future Television, live from Beirut. Yumna Naufal will be back again tomorrow with more updates. Don't miss it.
أن أذهب أنا وكل حزب الله إلى سوريا، سنذهب إلى سوريا.
هذا النظام لن يبقى في الشارع صالحا.